Welcome to the fourth event of the Build Up California's Roundtable series on early learning care facilities focused on the greater Los Angeles area. We are hosting this series as part of our Building Blocks for an Equitable Recovery initiative. Through this initiative, we explore the most effective strategies to equitably expand, improve, and sustain early learning care facilities as we face and recover from the shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the past three roundtables of this series, we heard the perspectives from representatives of government, business, and nonprofit sectors on how to use the federal relief funds to address child care facilities needs, how to plan for child care facilities as part of community development efforts, and how to finance child care facilities. Today, we will talk about how and why we should include child care facilities as a component of community development projects to promote family-oriented cities and neighborhoods. My name is Ericka Erickson, and I'm the Policy and Program Officer for Early Care and Education at the Low Income Investment Fund, and a lead facilitator in the development of Build Up California. LIF is a community development financial institution, or CDFI, and we are dedicated to advancing more equitable systems and healthier communities by mobilizing capital and partners. Build Up California is one of the ways we mobilize partners to address the need for quality and accessible built environments in early care and education. LIF serves as what we call a backbone organization, coordinating the efforts of Build Up California members and partners. If you represent an organization located or active in California, we hope you join us as a member of Build Up California. You can visit our website, buildupca.org, and click on membership to get more information. Now, before we start the roundtable, I want to share some reminders about logistics with you. This webinar is being interpreted in Spanish by María José Araújo. Gracias, María. Si desea escuchar este evento en español, haga clic en el icono del globo terráqueo en la parte inferior de la pantalla. The roundtable will start with an initial overview of the topic by our guest speakers, followed by a Q&A session. Please use the Q&A function to share your insights and questions with our guest speakers. I would like now to introduce our moderator for this discussion, Elsa Jacobson. Elsa serves as the Director of Public Policy at Child 360, where she works to further policies that advance equity in early childhood education at the local, state, and federal levels. I have the pleasure of working with Elsa as part of the California ECE Coalition, and I'm so glad that she will moderate the discussion. Elsa, thanks for accepting the invitation to moderate this panel. Please take over.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ericka. It is such a pleasure to be here and to partner with Build Up California on their roundtable series on ECE facilities. As Ericka mentioned, I serve as the Director of Public Policy at Child 360, an early learning nonprofit that is supporting over 500 early childhood providers with coaching, assessments, and professional development. We also provide advocacy trainings to parents and early educators, and we're piloting a new program called Sub 360 that prepares and places substitute teachers in early learning programs with anticipation that they will be offered full employment. We know that an equitable and high-functioning ECE system not only requires a well-supported workforce, it also requires adequate investment in ECE facilities. Families are most likely to access early care and education services where they live, but the supply of childcare is less in rural areas and low-income census tracts than in higher income areas. So we must address the challenge of sustaining and expanding the number of ECE facilities in diverse and often underserved communities. Today, we'll be joined by several key experts who will share their insights on working with developers and other stakeholders to co-locate ECE facilities with housing in the greater Los Angeles area. And first, I'd like to introduce Diane Payton. There she is. Diane is the program director of Child Lane, an organization that for over 37 years has been providing care in an environment where play is valued and children are supported to achieve their full potential. Diane has over 34 years of experience in early childhood education and has served the greater Long Beach, Wilmington, and San Pedro communities for over 25 years. Welcome, Diane. Next, we have Van Scott, Director of Development for Los Angeles and Jordan Downs at Bridge Housing Corporation, one of the largest nonprofit affordable housing developers in the United States. At Bridge, Van is overseeing the redevelopment of Jordan Downs, a large-scale mixed-income, mixed-use public housing revitalization effort in Los Angeles. Van has more than 25 years of experience in real estate development, finance, and community development, and we're delighted to have him with us today. Welcome again, Van. And finally, we have Eric Nakano. Eric is the Executive Director at Little Tokyo Service Center. LTSC is a 40-year-old nonprofit organization that builds affordable housing, provides tutoring and mentoring supports to local youth, engages in community development work in Little Tokyo, and provides a broad array of social services for the elderly and families. At LTSC, Eric has managed affordable housing and mixed-use development projects, overseen the development of multiple LTSC programs, and has served the organization since 1992. Welcome, Eric. So we'd like to begin our conversation today about the co-location of childcare facilities and housing by hearing the perspective of a childcare provider. So Diane, I'd like to turn the time over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to be able to share with you our experience that we have had having integrated childcare in facilities and in housing. First of all, Child Lane, we have been around over 35 years. We have 5 centers located between Long Beach, Wilmington, and San Pedro. We provide our funding comes to the Department of Ed, state funding, and it allows families of low income or underserved areas to be able to receive high quality child care. We promote and we really feel that we want to give children a foundation and to be able to be in childcare where they are valued and promote that they are growing and developing to be the maximum who they can be. So with our being in this field all these years, I just want to talk to you how we have gotten into providing care in the housing area. As I stated before, we've been in childcare over 35 years. In the city of Long Beach, in about 2001, the city approached us and said, you know what we're doing, we have an idea. There's an area in Long Beach that that's been underserved, and we want to do some renovation, remodeling, and bring that area, that community up so that it will have resources as many of the other areas in Long Beach. And when they invited us to they said to us, you know, we're a part of this development, which is called Renaissance Walk. We will provide a childcare center. And if you're interested, we'd like for you guys to, invite you to write for the proposal, which we did. So during that time, the housing, they built 2-story homes, very nice homes. They renovated the whole area. They put in new businesses. They revamped the whole area. It was just beautiful. And then with among the 2-story homes, we had a 1-story childcare center. If you could show the first picture, number 1, you can see right there, it looks like it's part of like it's a single level house. And it's called the Tammy Child Development Center. At this particular center, we care for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. We're able to provide care year-round for families and be able to meet the majority of their needs. Our hours are from 7 to 6 in the evening. So initially, the city, their thoughts were that the families that would buy the homes would be able to receive childcare with our facility, which they did. However, the funding, as you know, when you have funding or a building or childcare, you have to think about the continuous budget. How do we fund? How do we pay for various expenses? And we were able to get additional funding through the state. But with that, our families have to qualify. And many of the new families that purchase homes, they were over the income level. So many of them did not qualify for our program because of their income level. So that was one of the challenges initially with this particular center. If you could show the the picture number 2, please. If you can see to the left, my left, you can see the center where the trees are, and to the right, you can see the homes. That was the new homes that were built. And these were the residents that they were hoping could benefit from our program. So that is the Tammy Cow Center in Long Beach. And so that was our first project. Interesting enough, we have 3 centers that we have childcare in housing area. That same year we opened all 3. So that was a very busy year for me, trying to open up these centers and staff them and to also enroll children. So the same year, all 3 of these centers opened. So the second center is the Cabrillo Center. That's located also in Long Beach. Cabrillo Child Development Center. Actually, this was the existing childcare center, and it was located on the old Long Beach Navy base. The base had been vacant for years. And so again, the city of Long Beach, they decided that they were going to turn this 26-acre of land into an area where it would benefit people of let's say low income, where people need shelters. It would be emergency shelters. It would provide resources all in one location. So at villages at Cabrillo, there's housing, there's emergency shelter, there's resources all in one area, which is very unique. And we also have a child care center there. This is this particular center, we can enroll over 80 children. We have infants, toddlers, and preschool. If you could go to the second picture, please. As you can see, we're very fortunate to have a huge yard, very nice yard. And we have 3 playgrounds. This is one playground. This is one for the preschool children. And so the purpose of this center was to have the tenants in villages be able to take advantage of having a child care center where they wouldn't have to go out the area, and which would allow them to seek jobs and do various things that a lot of times there's limitations due to not having child care. So one of the challenges that we have, because many times families, they're in transition a lot, they did not stay any length of time, because we would enroll children and the next thing we knew they were gone again because of their living situation. If you can go to slide 3, please. This is another yard. This is for our toddler yard. And as you can see, we are able to, it's such a big building, we're able to have over 40 toddlers. And then we also have a separate yard just for infants. So this project, this partnership with villages is a really good partnership. However, like I said, in order to stabilize enrollment, that was our initial concern that we had trying to stabilize the population. But eventually we were able to open it more to the community, and we were able to provide for both. The third location is New Harbor Vista, and it's located in the city of Wilmington. And on the screen, you'll see we're inside the apartment unit. We have where you see that kind of peach door, that's where we are, and surrounding it, there's various units. Again, in the city of Los Angeles, they want to bring childcare, and in the city of Wilmington is very limited as far as available childcare for the residents. And they said, well, their thinking was if they renovated the New Harbor Vista apartment unit, said, well, let's put childcare there, and then that way it would help our residents out. Initially, they were giving us the space to provide childcare. And as we progressed on, we noticed that in that particular community is very family-based. And a lot of families prefer to keep their children at home, or they had family members to take care of their children. They were not ready to put their child or their children in childcare. So even though the plan was to be able to meet the needs of the residents inside of the apartment unit, we ended up basically opening it more towards the community, because a lot of families live in the units and they help each other out with childcare. So not many of them utilize the center base for care. So that gives you a little highlights about our program. And as we continue, if you have questions, I'll be here to answer them.
Thank you so much, Diane. And I just wanted to say, thank you for the incredible work that you and your whole team are doing on behalf of children and families, and also for our audience, pointing out some of the benefits of having childcare co-located with housing, and some of the challenges that you pointed out, not only with opening 3 sites in the same year, which is really a Herculean feat, but also just some of the unique challenges that come with different communities and different sites. So thank you very much. Now I'd like to turn the time over to Van Scott to talk about his work with Bridge Housing. So over to you, Van.
So hi, I'm Van Scott. I'm Director of Development for Los Angeles for Bridge Housing, and excited to be here for a number of reasons. I have to talk about childcare and housing development, but also, my mom, who is Karen Hill Scott, she was founder of Crystal Stairs. So it's kind of neat to kind of always tap into this world and blend our two worlds together. So this is exciting. So just some quick stuff on Bridge. For those of you who are new to Bridge, we were founded in 1983, so we've been around almost 40 years. Are headquartered in San Francisco, but we have offices in Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego, Portland, and Seattle. And I work in our Los Angeles office. We've developed quite a bit of affordable housing and some non-affordable housing, kind of internationally recognized. So that's kind of great to be known as a leader and innovator in this field. And then we have done 11 childcare centers that are incorporated into affordable housing development, serving 480 children. And so kind of what we do, we are in the real estate development business, but we also do property and asset management. We do community transformation at scale. So we really engage with improving quality of life within neighborhoods. So it's more than just housing. And we've got a very extensive resident program and services that we provide as well. So it's not just building, but really working to transform lives and help residents in a lot of different areas. Today, I'm going to speak specifically about a development in Los Angeles at Jordan Downs, which is in the Watts community of Los Angeles. It's a large master plan development in which we are taking public housing and converting it into private affordable housing, and in some cases, affordable and market rate housing. So the community has started with 700 public housing units, and when we're finished, we'll have 1,400 units, a mix of affordable and market rate, and 150 units of home ownership. So, and 120,000 square feet of retail, and 60,000 square foot community center. And we'll have 9 acres of open space. So it's a very exciting project. It's one that's, when all is said and done, will probably be about 20 years from the beginning to the end. And so it's very exciting. Part of it includes, why we're here today, there's an existing child care center that's run by an organization, but it's overseen by LACO, the Los Angeles County Office of Education. And so we at some point have to tear down that location, but prior to tearing it down, we need to find a new home within the Jordan Downs community, within the master plan community. So kind of our challenge is replacing that 80 slot child care center within the new Jordan Downs redevelopment, identifying the location with the required indoor and outdoor space and parking, and identifying financing opportunities to kind of help make that happen. Some of the strengths, as I've listed here, is that there is a high demand for childcare within this community, within Jordan Downs and within the Watts community. Bridge has extensive experience in developing affordable housing and mixed-use development. LACO knows childcare development and operations, and kind of LACO is open to replacing the current childcare center with 2 40-slot centers. And then, kind of a real strength of this is that we've got multiple phases within the development. So we've got opportunities to try and work through where and how we get to fit in this new childcare center and childcare centers within the development. One thing I didn't put up here is that we have a housing partner in this project, and they're the Michaels organization. So we split up kind of the housing development, and so we're each looking at the childcare opportunities on all of our developments together. Wanted to share with you here, this shows you kind of my next few phases. So on the right here, I'm not sure if you see my cursor or not, but on the far right between Laurel and Calmia is my phase that's beginning this coming February, which is an 80 unit development. And then right beside it, consisting of 4 buildings, is my my 4th phase. And we looked at childcare in this phase, and it didn't quite work because of our parking constraints, which I'll share with you in a moment. But because this is a multi-phase project, it gives us the opportunity to really work through with LACO and our architects on really looking at and figuring out where exactly we can fit a childcare center that's for 40 young people, with the appropriate amount of outdoor space, which is 75 square feet per child outdoors, and then 35 square feet per child indoors. And working within, and having their own dedicated space. So we've got really 3 phases to kind of work this out with LACO. So we're very close and things are coming along, but not quite there yet. And I'll share with you, this is my 4th phase, in which we were trying to figure out how to, and it's might be a little small on your screen, but the gray area right here where my cursor is shows the outdoor play space. And then the pink shows the indoor childcare space on the ground floor for the child care center, and then the next level above this as housing. So the part of the outdoor play space has a covered outdoor area by the natural setup of the second floor of the apartment complex. So we had a feeling that that was really workable, but where our challenge came in was in the parking requirements for the housing and the childcare, and we just could not work the parking in a way without going subterranean. And so with the cost of construction continuing to escalate through COVID and continuing, we have been trying to see how we can accommodate our parking needs on an on-grade level. So for my fourth phase, this is not, childcare is not going to work, but we feel like, if I go back for a moment, that in one of our next two phases, we'll be able to work through the parking challenges and then really focus on how we are able to raise the funding for the child care center itself. We feel like we can incorporate it, part of the hard shell, into the housing cost, but the tenant improvements and more specific childcare elements will, need to work through with LACO and some of our partners here today with how we're able to raise the funding for the complete build out of the child care center. With that, I thank you guys for your time, and I look forward to questions afterwards.
Thank you so much, Van, and especially for helping our audience understand the multifaceted, multi-pronged process of co-locating childcare with housing and the importance of sequencing as you were showing us the various phases of the project. Really an exciting and ambitious project that all of us in Los Angeles are really looking forward to seeing to completion. And also just so tremendous. I didn't know that you were the son of Karen Hill Scott. She is a true luminary in our field. And for those of you on this webinar who aren't familiar with Karen Hill Scott and Crystal Stairs is a resource and referral agency in Los Angeles, one of several that helps parents in particular, above all the things that they do, to help identify childcare for their children and provide a wide array of family support services. So very, very cool. I'm sure she's an incredible partner and advisor in this project. So thank you, Van. And next up, we have Eric Nakano to talk about his work with Little Tokyo Services Center. Eric.
Hi, thank you, Elsa. I'm glad to be here. Talk a little bit about our work in both housing as well as early childhood education. So I'm here with two hats, both as a builder of affordable housing, but also as an organization that operates an ECE program. And Van, I should mention, when I was going to urban planning at UCLA, I took a class from Karen Hill Scott, and she was amazing in everything that Elsa and other people have described. So we've built over 1,000 units of affordable housing in the Los Angeles area. Close to 300 units in Little Tokyo in the greater downtown area. But actually, most of the units we built have been outside of Little Tokyo, built in partnership with community organizations in other communities of color. For instance, Koreatown, Chinatown, and South LA. So we included 3 child care centers in family affordable housing buildings that we've developed. One was an infant toddler center in a building in Little Tokyo, where we actually leased to another nonprofit to operate that center. A second is a preschool that was included in a affordable housing project in Chinatown, which we built, partnered with the organization Chinatown Service Center. And that preschool is operated also by another nonprofit working with Chinatown Service Center. And finally, we have a preschool at a building that we operate in the Temple Beaudry neighborhood called Angelina Apartments. So I'm gonna just share my screen now real briefly with just a few slides. When we built these projects, which was in the late 1990s and early 2000s, we were fortunate that at that time, the California Department of Education was actually opening up funding opportunities to new contractors. And so we applied for funding, general child care funds, and started our programs initially with a family child care program. So now we have 16 providers, and they focus on providing care for infants and toddlers. And then later we expanded to apply for state preschool funding for the preschool at Angelina Apartments, which you can see here. In addition, we also passed through CDE funds to another nonprofit, Koreatown Youth and Community Center, for their preschool in Koreatown. So in total, we serve about 170 children, very low-income families in the Temple Beaudry, Echo Park, Westlake, and Koreatown neighborhoods. And these are, some of our family child care providers who are able to also utilize the outdoor play area of the Angelina Apartments preschool. Incorporating space for early childhood education in affordable housing is clearly something that is going to be beneficial to residents, particularly in affordable housing projects that are geared towards families. So at Angelina Apartments, for instance, the units there are like 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms. So these are large families, very low income, who are going to have, infants, toddlers, preschool age kids, and older. And so, in addition to providing much needed childcare, our ECE program, I think, benefits residents in other ways as well. So through the family childcare program, we recruited residents to become family childcare providers. We help them to get licensed and provide them with child development and business training. These typically are stay-at-home moms, and then were offered the opportunity to basically build a micro business, right? And they can earn anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 a month, depending on how many children they take in. And so currently, 6 out of our 16 providers are residents currently. And actually one former provider was a success story. She saved enough money to be able to move out, buy a home, and then start a large family childcare program in her new home. The other thing that incorporating childcare facilities in affordable housing projects is that in addition to benefiting residents, those centers provide a significant benefit to that neighborhood. So for Angelina Apartments, the Temple Beaudry, Echo Park neighborhood is very dense, very low-income immigrant neighborhood. And so part of our goal in building affordable housing projects is not just to build a nice place for people to live, but to be able to create permanent assets that uplift the entire neighborhood. And so at our Angelina project, between the preschool and other services we provide there, it serves essentially as a community center for that neighborhood in an area sorely lacking in those kinds of resources. And now there's actually the opportunity to really expand that kind of connection between ECE facilities and housing. There will be new capital sources from the state. AB 131 and 128, the Early Learning and Care Infrastructure Grant Program, will offer capital, right, to build out ECE facilities, and also expansion funding for new spaces for children. Not sure if CDE is going to open things up again to new potential contractors, but we'll see. I wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about the challenges of co-locating centers in affordable housing. One area that where there can be conflict or tension is sharing space between the center and the residents of the affordable housing building. So for instance, the outdoor play area, of course, is for exclusive use for the preschool during hours of operation. But after the preschool closes, it can and is used by residents after. And so that adds to the wear and tear on the play equipment. And so the question comes up, who's going to pay for, that kind of maintenance and damage? So I think we had to work out, a system for who's going to pay for what, right? Given that both the preschool and the affordable housing building have limited budgets. So the system we worked out is, so systems and structures, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, walls, repairs and maintenance for those elements are paid for by the building. And furniture, cabinetry, equipment, et cetera, are paid for by the preschool. And sometimes it's challenging. Who's responsible for playground, for liability insurance? That would be both the building and the preschool, which are both required to take out liability insurance. But despite the challenges, I think the benefits clearly outweigh the difficulties in co-locating childcare centers in affordable housing. The need is evident. Affordable housing residents benefit, and the neighborhood benefits. Looking forward, I wanted to just bring up one planning challenge in looking to expand developing ECE facilities in affordable housing. With universal TK taking place, while overall positive, nonprofit operated preschools face enrollment challenges. I'm sure many of you know what I'm talking about here. And so, change has been happening very quickly in the ECE world. With universal TK being operated primarily by school districts, where does that leave nonprofit owned or nonprofit operated preschools? And the problem is that, in developing affordable housing, it takes 3 to 4 years to plan and finally construct affordable housing, right? And so the challenge is, in order to plan for an ECE center or a preschool in affordable housing project, you have to be able to plan it out that far in advance. And then the question will be, will the nonprofit feel confident enough that it will be able to successfully operate a center, given those enrollment challenges and the kinds of changes that have been happening in the ECE world pretty rapidly. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest questions or challenges, facing co-locating facilities today. So with that, I'll just leave it at that, and we can open it up to question and answers. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was an incredible presentation, and it was wonderful the way that you showcased how these co-located projects benefit residents as well as the neighborhood. And it was truly incredible that you were able to recruit residents to become family child care providers, and that I think you said 6 out of the 16 are current residents. That's really tremendous. And thank you for also bringing that policy lens to our conversation as well with your last comments. So at this point, I'd like to invite all of our panelists back to the screen to answer some questions from the audience. And this is really a question for all of you. Is at what stage during an affordable housing development, with the potential co-location with childcare, should ECE advocates connect with developers? And when is too late, especially if you're hoping that if you see an affordable housing development taking shape, taking form, at one point, should advocates or childcare professionals jump in and say, hey, this could be a co-located project? And what perhaps is the best process for doing so?
Well, I can start. I think the short answer is that it needs to be very early. Developing a partnership between an affordable housing developer and a childcare provider needs to happen early, because first, the project needs to be designed to be able to incorporate, as Van was describing, the indoor space as well as the outdoor play area. And then, affordable housing financing, particularly the low-income housing tax credit program, can be applied towards building out, childcare facilities. particularly if they're, targeting or geared towards serving low-income families in the neighborhood as well as residents. But so as those funding applications go in, the child care center needs to be in those applications or not, right? And those funding applications can happen fairly early. So I would say, the developing the partnership with the child care provider and the affordable housing developer really needs to happen early, and hopefully that can be facilitated by more awareness among affordable housing developers about the importance of and the benefits of incorporating ECE facilities in affordable housing.
And I would just add on with Eric as well, is that, we're looking at a development that is now 3 years out and trying to look at ways to finance it. And that's part of the challenge in terms of communicating with LACO, in terms of some of their funding, because they say they can't kind of budget that far in advance, because it's, we're contingent upon receiving various financing before we can even start construction of the affordable housing development. So we're kind of having that conversation with them now. And I think as we're able to kind of piece it together, they'll be able to come with potential funding. And I know I haven't been able to respond to folks on the chat, but we're right now looking at different options on how we can fund it, and fund that component of the development in order to kind of make it happen. But I think you can't be too early in the conversation. You can be too late. So my development starting in February, it's way too late. And even the phase that's starting, the next phase that's starting in August of next year, it's too late for that one now as well. But our other future phases, now is the time, so we can kind of see how we layer all of the financing together.
I have just to add to what both of you said. Yes, definitely being involved early on in the project. We were fortunate that 2 of our centers, they built the centers were brand new. And I really wish that they had invited us to be part of the planning initially, even with planning of the child care center. They did not get our advice on the best way to maybe configure the center where it will meet the needs of the program and even for the community. We're really fortunate that 2 of the facilities that the buildings, we did not have to pay for the buildings. As long as we occupy and provide childcare, that expense was taken care of. The only thing we had to fund was to our budget, our day-to-day operation, which I think it was Van or Eric, you mentioned with the state funding, because they had RFP and different grants that were available, we were able to apply for it, which allowed us to be able to have that budget for our programs. But definitely, if you're able to be part of the planning in advance, I strongly suggest you be a part of on that table to do that, be a part of the planning.
Thank you, all of you, for those comments. Certainly, you have made the case for jumping in early. Back to the policy, we know that Governor Newsom recently signed several bills that are designed to make it easier to create more affordable housing in California. And at the federal level, the Biden administration's proposed American Jobs Plan calls for more than $200 billion to increase the supply of affordable housing. And it also calls for $25 billion to upgrade and construct ECE facilities. This package hasn't been passed yet, but in light of state and federal support for expanding affordable housing, what is your advice to advocates as to what they can do to promote the importance of co-location when we're starting to see some real state and federal support among our leaders to expand affordable housing? What would you say to advocates? Understanding that you yourselves are also advocates for these projects.
Well, one thing I would suggest is, there in both in Southern California as well as Northern California, there's like in Southern California, there's the Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing. And these are basically affordable housing developers, nonprofits in the Southern California area. I think there's a similar association in the Bay Area. And so I think it would be good for advocates to be able to hook up with and then, do presentations at like they have an annual conference. There's also a Housing California annual conference, or there was until the pandemic hit. But those are opportunities to be able to talk to a lot of housing developers and, ideally get in on the ground floor of possible projects where ECE facilities could be located.
That's excellent. Thank you. Diane or Van, did you have a comment before we move on to another question? No, I don't think so. Okay, I apologize. It looks like my internet is a little bit spotty, so there may be a bit of lag time. One of the other questions in the chat was directed to Diane, but I think it could be directed to Van and Eric as well. And the question is essentially with the childcare facilities that are co-located with housing, Diane, the ones that you're overseeing, and Eric and Van that you will be seeing, are there opportunities for parents to send their children to those centers and pay full fees, or are these childcare centers or family childcare homes only for families who qualify for state or federal subsidies, or is it a mix?
That's a good question. Yes, our programs, they're in the communities to help families who are low income. And so we have a family rank system that, based upon their income, it will give them a rank of where they are and who can come into the center. It's the lowest income first. And then as let's say if we move through that rank and we have met all of the ranking number, we can go to the highest income. But it does focus on the families who are in need, those who are working and, who need childcare. And if they don't have the money to pay the amount that normally it costs for full tuition for childcare. So it's not to say that we cannot accommodate those of higher income. It's just that we look at the lowest income first.
I'd just add that's been part of our conversation with LACO in that, just how do we, as we move into an affordable housing development, make sure that all of the residents or a good number of the residents can take advantage of the services that are within the community being served. And so you ask a question that, or whoever asked the question, I think it's a great one, and one I'll definitely follow up with as we get further into our conversations with LACO on an actual location.
Let me just mention that, I had mentioned before that the low-income housing tax credit program is one of the main financing sources for affordable housing. And funds from that funding source can be used to help build out ECE facilities. But in order for that to take place, those facilities do need to be targeting or serving low-income families, right? And so it does make it more difficult to have a mixed income population in those ECE facilities. I think most of the slots in those centers do need to be geared towards low-income families in order to be able to apply the low-income housing tax credit funding to help with the build out. Otherwise, then you have to independently find other sources of funding to be able to build out the childcare center, which can be challenging.
Thanks so much, Eric. On that issue of financing, I know that all three of you have talked a little bit about some of the ways that you're financing these co-location projects, but we were hoping you could talk a little bit more about how you're blending and braiding that funding, and perhaps, beyond the low income tax credit, if there are any untraditional sources of funding that you have been able to identify or, to seize as part of your planning efforts. I think everyone's always looking for creative solutions to financing. So we'd love to hear kind of about the scope of what you've been looking at.
I'll start off in that, since ours is, it's one that we're trying to get off the ground. I mean, we've looked at LACO as a potential funding source. And so there is a possibility to get some funding from them that we are yet to formally tap into, but that they have kind of stated kind of as we get to a firm facility location that they'll begin to dig a little deeper. But, also talking to, LISC, some of the foundations in and around our region that support this type of work, and just trying to dig a little bit more. And obviously, listening and learning from Eric and Diane on what they've done and what they continue to do. It's just trying to see how we piece it all together. I'm hoping it's not as, it doesn't have as many layers as we have on the affordable housing side, but it seems like we will have some layers.
We, like for one of the centers that we incorporated into affordable housing building, we were able to get a bank foundation grant to help with that build out. And now, as I had mentioned earlier, there's that new state program, the early childhood education infrastructure. And so there was a question: can low-income housing tax credit funding for childcare facilities be blended with these new state funds? And I think the answer would be yes. So I think I'm not sure what the requirements are for the state ECE infrastructure program, is. So there may be legal issues that would need to get worked out, but I think that I would think you should be able to blend those sources.
The majority of our funding is through state funds. We do have some grants that we utilize that's able to offset our budget, but in general, it's mainly state. With the funding we have, it is really helpful because it allows families, it's not just families who are working, it's families who may have medical needs and unable to work or experiencing homelessness. There's several categories that they qualify for the program, which is very helpful. And so that way we're able to provide care for young children and give them, an experience where they're able to come to school where normally maybe they would be at home with a family member or someone like that. So even though the funding source is limited, it allows for so much for us to be able to meet the needs of the community. Our goal is to be able to expand and be able to have additional funding, but right now it is limited.
Well, thank you all for your insights on this topic. And I just wanted to mention, when Eric was talking about the state-funded infrastructure grants, those are $250 million worth of grants that will be available for the renovation and construction of ECE facilities. And that grant application has yet to be released, but all of us in the field are eagerly awaiting the release of that application. Another question that came up in the chat is around whether or not any of these childcare centers or family childcare homes that are co-located with housing have been used to support after-school care. And we certainly found during the pandemic that many childcare providers ended up providing after-school care to school-age children, as well as to 0 to 5-year-olds. So the folks in the webinar are curious if after-school care has been a use of any of the childcare facilities, or if there are any plans to make that happen.
Currently, we were not able to provide after-school care. Ours is mainly 0 months to 5 years of age. So we're not at this time. Who knows what the future may bring? As you said, with the expanding funds, they may be available that we could provide that later on. But at this time, and especially during the pandemic, we were not able to provide that service.
Okay. All right, well, I'm curious, there have been a number of questions that came in through the chat. Some of them have already been answered by other people on the webinar. But I guess I would just ask the panelists, if you have any closing remarks, or if there are any questions that came up in the chat that you would like to respond to. We have just a couple more minutes.
I have a question that's come up in our community meetings at Jordan, where folks have asked about kind of non-traditional childcare hours. And just curious if Eric, Diane, if you guys have, if your centers are open in kind of non-traditional hours, or even folks on the chat as well. Some have mentioned 24-hour facilities, and I just really don't have a gauge on that yet. Really kind of staffing, funding, if you can generate the income to kind of sustain it, but just curious.
Our centers, we're just Monday through Friday. We do not have care over the weekend. I failed to mention that we do have a family child care network. We have over 20 homes in the Long Beach, and San Pedro and Wilmington area. And our providers, they are able to provide weekend care. They provide non-traditional hours. I mean, we have families who have to go to work at 12 o'clock midnight or early morning. And because it's their business, they're a licensed family child care home, and we contract with them. We're able to help our families who need weekend care. We're able to connect them with a family childcare provider who can meet their needs. So we're really fortunate that we have that other part of our project within our agency, that we're able to connect with the family childcare provider. But normally with the childcare center, that's a little bit more challenging because you're looking at staffing, funding. So it is quite challenging, but with the family childcare network, we're able to meet the needs of some of the families that way.
Thank you so much, Diane. And that's so representative of a trend really across the state, particularly during the pandemic, that it's been family childcare providers that are providing that care during non-traditional hours that families really need. So thank you. I know we are about at time here, and I'd like to thank all of the panelists for generously sharing their expertise today. And thank you to Ericka and the entire Build Up California team for putting together this very important ECE facility series. I'm certainly looking forward to advocating alongside all of you for further early childhood facilities investments. So back to you, Ericka.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. And a big thank you goes to our speakers and our moderator, Diane, Eric, Van, and Elsa. I also want to use the opportunity to thank our supporting organizations, the County of Los Angeles, the Office for the Advancement of Early Care and Education, the Child Care Planning Committee of the County of Los Angeles, Child Care Alliance of Los Angeles, Child 360, and the Advancement Project. And big thanks to our sponsors of our Build Up California work, Heisen Simons Foundation and First 5 LA. And I also want to use the opportunity to remind everyone that the recordings of these webinars are on our YouTube channel. You can go to our website to get the link. And also to invite you to join at our last roundtable of our series next week. That will be on how elected officials can lead the expansion of childcare facility supply. And thanks again, and see you at our next event.